I don't have a lot to say here in summing up what we talked about last week in Daniel and Ezekiel. I think everyone did a pretty decent job of demonstrating that the Son of Man, the same phrase used in two different places with two different meanings, is significant. And it's an important lesson for us to take in our hermeneutic in general, and the idea that just because a phrase appears in different places in the Bible doesn't mean that it's going to have the same meaning. This is Exegesis 101. Context is what determines the meaning of any phrase, and that's what we have to pay close attention to. Where Ezekiel uses Son of Man in one way, namely to emphasize it's a title used for him, the in Daniel, Son of Man is used in a different way, and it seems to be talking about a messianic figure. And of course, we see later in Christ revealing fully that that's a messianic figure, and we can see it. And this is what I posted in the middle of the week, and I think everyone did a pretty good job of pointing out that the Son of Man passage, the Ancient of Days passage, in chapter 7, where the Son of Man is presented, stands before the Ancient of Days approaches him, that does seem to be messianic in nature, particularly when we get to verse 14, given dominion, glory, and a kingdom that all the peoples, nations, and language might serve him. His dominion is everlasting. That is a messianic, those are messianic themes. This idea of dominion. Now, David isn't specifically mentioned, but it could certainly be implied here. But that is, it does have a messianic flavor. And of course, later in the book in Daniel, we do actually see a reference to a Mashiach, a Messiah, an anointed one. So, I mean, the idea of a king being a Mashiach, an anointed one, is very common in the not only in the ancient Near East, but specifically in the biblical text. There are a lot of Mashiachs, anointed one. Even King Saul is called the Lord's anointed. But the messianic expectation is there will be a great anointed one who will rule, and his dominion will last longer than the normal kings. And so it does seem very clear that Daniel has this idea of a Messiah figure. And of course, I think it's clear from the context in the Gospels that Jesus is taking that on when he calls himself Son of Man. It's possible he's doing a play on both not only his nature as man, but also the messianic figure from Daniel. But of course, you have to take that on a context-by-context basis. And most of the context seem to suggest the messianic expectation at the very least there. But getting back to what I was saying earlier about how we can use this and apply this in our own exegesis passages, the term Son of Man, B'nai Adam, B'nai Ha'adam, Son of the Man, this is a phrase that appears a lot in the text, like in the Psalms. It appears several times. And the knee-jerk reaction of a lot of people is to just apply, anytime the Psalms, for instance, that talk about the Son of Man, refers to Jesus. But we have to be careful in doing that, because as Ezekiel teaches us, sometimes Son of Man doesn't necessarily have to refer to a divine figure. Sometimes it just refers to a man. And it's the context that tells us. And I think that's a good lesson that we can draw from that.